Hi, it's Cara. You're watching Bianca Reads. This is my March wrap up. So I read, I think it was 27 books in March, which is pretty good for me. Not the best I've ever done, but good, decent. We read a lot of good things. I'm gonna go through them today. We ended up getting five stars out of that group, but no DNFs, nothing lower than a 3-star, so that's pretty positive, seeing as like both February and January I think had at least one DNF. Oh no, February didn't. What about January? January had a bunch of DNFs, but February and now March didn't, so that's, I think that's a really solid reading month. Let's jump in. I have a lot to talk about, obviously. Should come over to the side a bit because I want to show you some pictures of some things. Alright, so first up we have Murder of Crows by Kayla Ancrum. This is a the first novel that takes place between seasons 1 and 2 of the Lethal Lit podcast. So it's a continuation of the podcast, directly taking place between seasons 1 and 2. I love season 1 of Lethal Lit. I haven't listened to season 2 yet because it's still rolling and I kind of want to wait till the whole thing's out and then binge it. But I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I listened to the audiobook because I kind of wanted a matching experience to the podcast, rather than reading it with my eyes, but obviously it is a physical book. I really enjoyed the audiobook. It's narrated by Rebecca Soler, who does the narration for Tig, who's the main character in the podcast. The podcast just has more recordings of other people contributing than this did. It was really fun. I had a good time. The mystery was brutal, and I'm really interested to see how much it plays a role in season 2 of Lethal Lit, or if it will kind of skim over it as unnecessary reading. I'm really intrigued. I had a good time with this. It is a middle grade mystery kind of thing. Like it's a murder mystery, but the characters are like preteen. Like they're like 13, 14. And it's really suited for that middle grade era. Really loved it. It was a great time. I gave it 4 stars. Then I listened to The New Girl by Jessie Q Sutanto. I really liked Jessie Sutanto's like campy murder mystery, cozy mystery, Diet Lay for Aunties. She also has another like darker thriller. This one's like her second darker thriller. YA, and I didn't like it as much. I don't know whether it was the YA-ness of it or something else in the narrative voice, but it just wasn't my fave. We follow a character who's just started at a new fancy boarding school and things are going weird. Murdery mystery, very like tied into the decadence and like abuse of power of rich people. She's a Chinese Malay immigrant in America, and that really ties into the story. But yeah, the narrative was not my fave. Some of the ending was pretty wild, the final plot twist, but it took so long to get there. I didn't feel like it had much momentum. I gave it 3 stars. It was decent. I wouldn't recommend it, but I would recommend Diet Lay for Aunties. So then I read this book. Oh, it's like glaring so bad off the lights. Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. This is a fantasy with like moon magic based on Chinese mythology, the legend of Chang'e, the moon goddess. I enjoyed this. I didn't love it. It's very slow. And kind of like I know a part of the reason this is slow is because it's using traditional storytelling techniques, where it kind of like has sections that cover each like different parts of the story, and they kind of wrap up and move on to a certain extent with this overarching plot. But I had a real hard time keeping myself invested and keeping momentum through to the end. There were bits I really liked and other bits that I thought were really like I just didn't see why we were spending the time there. The romance was not my fave. I didn't feel like it came naturally within the story. It was fine, but I just didn't like vibe with it very much. And the bits that I enjoyed, like the action components, felt sped over too fast. Like all the dialogues and descriptions were a bit too slow for my personal preference, and then the action was too fast, so you didn't get a chance to really sit with it. Yeah, it was fine. I did give it 4 stars because I thought it was doing really interesting things. It was like a 3.5 rounded up to a 4. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the world. It was just about the pacing that didn't work well for me, but I acknowledge this is like a Western bias probably, and not a reflection of the quality of the book. It just a reflection of my enjoyment. Next, I read a collection of poetry called If They Come For Us by Fatima Asghar. I really enjoyed this. This was about obviously the partition in India and how that influences, like, is influenced by colonialism. Obviously it's like it's driven by colonialism, but like how this affects within India, but also migration out of India and Bangladesh and Pakistan. I loved this. I thought it was stunning. It was a beautiful collection of poetry. I would 100% recommend it. It's poetry, so I can't like explain much, but it was stunning. Then I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which is a romance book following our main character, whose name I can't remember all of a sudden. She's autistic, though her like journey to using that kind of terminology grows across the book. And she feels like she needs to learn some skills on how to adequately mask how to mask in a way that people won't notice that she doesn't know what she's doing in sex and relationships. She wants like sex lessons so that she can like perform better, and so she hires a male escort to teach her, but obviously it's a romance. I really enjoyed this. I understand some of the problems with it. There were some moments that I was like, ooh. But overall I thought it was really good. I was like really invested in the relationship and I thought it was really sweet. I do have like a, I kind of like a guy who's like has open flaws, as long as it's like treated well. So I enjoyed it on that front. I thought it was really good. What did I end up rating it? 4 stars. Obviously I gave that poetry collection 5 stars if that wasn't obvious. And then following up from that, I read another romance which was a lot like Adios by Alexis Daria, which is the sequel companion to, what was the first one called? You Had Me at Hola was the first book. This one follows best friends who split up. They went separate ways at college, and it was kind of like a bad situation where he just kind of upped and left, and she was like, what? They were best friends and they'd had like a hint of a romance in high school and then split up. And he now runs a gym and she's a marketing consultant, and they end up having to like work together in a like chance meeting situation. And then they're kind of rekindling their romance and figuring out where things went wrong for them. I really enjoyed this. I listened to the audiobook. It was really solid. I give it 4 stars. It was really good. Then I also listened to Bitter by Kweke Emezi, which is the prequel follow-up to Pet. This is a middle grade series, so I feel like this one runs a little bit older. And they definitely have broad appeal. And this is set in a world where people's like, it's hard to describe, but there's monsters that can come out of artwork, and it's a dynamic between like the people who are making these monsters trying to like, it's kind of like a parable for like violence in like standing up for yourself. And like when it's okay to be walking the line between like violence for violence sake versus violence for standing up for yourself. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it as much as Pet. I feel like I liked the characters in Pet a lot more, and I found these characters were dealing with like a darker situation, but in a way that like, I don't know, they were making choices that I didn't always necessarily, like, I understood. No, I did agree with them, but like there was something that like maybe this was all because I thought it was also a middle grade, and I don't feel like it is. Pet very clearly follows like a 12-year-old Jam, who's a trans girl who is dealing with her own little demons, and then this world's meant to like, Bitter is meant to be way before that, before these before the world has eradicated evil, basically, whereas Pet is set in that time where evil is meant to be eradicated. And it just was not middle grade, so I think my expectations were, I think Bitter, the main character in Bitter, is more like late teens, and it's much more about like joining revolutionary movements and having that autonomy. Like, she's much more autonomous, and I just went in with the right expectations, I think, so it didn't match the vibe I was wanting, but I did think it was really powerful and really important, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Milk Teeth by Ray White, which is another collection of poetry. This is an Australian non-binary poet talking about trans issues and like the complexities of living a trans existence, and I just loved it. It was great. 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. I can't remember, I sent my favorite poem to Jessie, but I can't remember what it was called now, but there was one poem that really stuck with me. It was stunning. Next up, I read Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong, which is the sequel to These Violent Delights. And this is a duology. That's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in Shanghai in the 20s. And so we follow Roma, who's like the son of a Russian crime gang, and Juliet, who's the daughter of a Chinese crime gang. Rivals, obviously. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I did think the first book was stronger. This kind of jumps in right off the bat, and it's been a while since I read the first one, and I kind of wish I'd reread it because I think I needed some context. The writing style was amazing. I love the writing, love the characters. There were a few moments that like didn't quite hit right for me, but overall I thought this was good. Maybe just a tad long. But yeah, I had a really fun time with this. I'm going to continue to read from Chloe Gong. She's a New Zealand author, Chinese New Zealand author, and I just really enjoy this. I gave this one 4 stars, but I really loved These Violent Delights even more. But I think I knew this wasn't going to be quite as good because I couldn't see it wrapping up in a way that wasn't gonna like kind of let me down. But I'm very excited to see where it goes from here because there's a spin-off sequel duology, and I'm really excited for that. That starts later this year. Then I read Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shauna Maguire, which is the 7th Wayward Children book. This is one of the ones that follows premise-wise and is kind of set post going into Worlds. We follow Nora, who was in one of the earlier ones, in An Absent Dream. She was in Come Tumbling Down and Beneath the Sugar Sky. And Cora, sorry, not Nora, Cora. She comes from a mermaid area, but some things went down in An Absent Dream and Beneath the Sugar Sky that messed her up a bit, and she's deciding to go to this other school that's more about like fitting into your world, like into the real world, rather than trying to find your door again, because this is like a portal fantasy series. I really enjoyed this installment. It's pretty dark, it's a bit different. I'm interested to see where the series continues to go. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 5 stars. Next up I read Edge Dancer, which was the final novella in this collection, by Brandon Sanderson. I was buddy reading this with April from Aprilis Maximus. We're working our way through Brandon Sanderson's works, and this was our next one. It is a novella set in the same world as the Stormlight Archives, and I really enjoyed it. It was very much just like a little snapshot of one character's existence who isn't a point of view character otherwise, but gives you some world building things. I like seeing what's happening in the broader scope of the world that doesn't directly affect the main characters in the main plot yet. And I enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. Did I think it was the best thing ever? No, but I had a good time with it. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, I listened to Cherish Pharah by Bethany C. Morrow, which is a adult psychological thriller. But this one didn't hit for me. I listened to Kayla from Books and Law talk about this, and I totally agree with some of the things she was saying, and that I don't think the book quite had a grasp of what it was trying to do. It kind of circled around the thriller aspect so often. Like, I kept going like, oh, is that mysterious? Does it tie in? And I'd have like a little moment of being on edge, and then it would circle back, and I'm like, but nothing came of it, and it didn't build well. Like, it didn't have a good build. Kind of just circled around for a while. I follow a character who's super manipulative, but she is like also the victim of the situation, and everything's happening to her, but she's also doing everything she can to try and manipulate everyone around her, and she thinks she's in control. It was a very interesting idea, but I just don't think it executed right, and it just didn't quite work. Also, the plot twist, like the ending, like what was happening when you finally got to that, didn't quite live up to the amount, like to the level of vibes that the rest of the book was giving off. Like, it just didn't quite pay off, so it didn't feel satisfying. I do like Bethany C. Morrow things. Yeah, so it didn't work for me. I'd be really interested to read more from Bethany C. Morrow. I've read her other stuff. I really enjoy lots of her other stuff, and I'm keen to keep trying, but this one was a bit of a miss for me. I ended up giving it a 3.5 rounded up to a 4 because I did enjoy the journey at times. Then I reread Equal Rights by Terry Pratchett, which is the 3rd Discworld novel. Had a good time reading this. Again with April from Aprilius Maximus, all as part of Pages from Pages of Pages, Tearing Through Time read along. Paige and some others are going in mini-series order. April and I are going in publication order. So we read Equal Rights. This one is super fun. It's the first introduction to the witches, and the witches are some of my favorite characters. One of my favorite series of what I've read. So yeah, it's Discworld. If you don't know, you don't know, but I gave it 4 stars. It was really fun. Then I read The Appeal by Janice Hallett, which is a thriller told entirely through emails between characters and like other, it's all multimedia, mixed media. I loved this. It's kind of slow burn thriller, where for like 3/4 of the book you know someone's died because this is a file of emails related to a murder case, but for a long time you're just seeing these characters like interact with each other and be kind of rude and snarky and manipulative, but then the twist hits and things start getting put into perspective, and it's like bow, bow, bow. It was so good. I would so recommend this. I do think some people might not like it, but I loved it. But even like in the build up, there are still things that are really shady going on. You can kind of see all these hints of things not adding up, and you are like trying to solve it as you go, and you're following there's also some texts between 2 junior lawyers who are the ones like reading these files and trying to figure it out, so you also get their perspective. There were many times I was reading their perspective being like, you missed a big red flag. And I was right. I loved this. It was 5 stars. It was so good. I would totally recommend it. I do think some people are going to be disappointed by the ending, but I was not. Then I read Olympus by Rachel Smythe, Volume 1. I didn't love this. It was like so fine for me. I just didn't get the appeal. Some people absolutely love this, and I just meh. It wasn't bad enough. Like, there was nothing particularly wrong with it. I think I just didn't vibe very well with the art style in this. It's a graphic novel webcomic. I didn't vibe super well with the art style. I didn't love the plot, and it was very meh for me. I gave it 3 stars, but it's like a 2.5 rounded up. Then I listened to The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I had a really good time with this. I really loved it. The audiobook was great. I liked seeing... I did also read the Testaments, which I might actually talk about them quickly together. There was a few other things in between. But I gave The Handmaid's Tale 5 stars and the Testaments 4 stars. Oh no, wait. I gave them both 4 stars. But to me, The Handmaid's Tale was a little better. I kind of liked not knowing how everything worked and kind of seeing those things unfold. Whereas the Testaments, I think, explained a little too much. I also was not that interested in seeing how the regime was toppled. I just was less interested. What I really liked about the Testaments was seeing some of the things about how other parts of the society were built. So I really, really liked Handmaid's Tale. Enjoyed the Testaments, didn't love it as much, but both were really good for me. Both 4 stars. Yeah, I'm glad I read them. I can see their influence on a lot of other things, and I thought they were both really solid and the audiobooks were really good. I read another graphic novel, which was Extraordinary by V.E. Schwab. This is the villains graphic novel. My main gripe with this is that so much of this was directly overlapped with the plot of Vicious. Like there was a whole section that was just the plot of Vicious, which I felt like I didn't need to read. I wanted more about the characters we hadn't met. But anyway, everybody says this is a standalone. I feel like it's the first in a series. I don't know what's going on. It does say a 1, but I feel like they're meant to be like a collection of standalones, but this doesn't feel like a standalone in my opinion. I enjoyed it. I had a decent amount of time, a decently good time. It's a graphic novel, so it was over really quickly. But yeah, I didn't get why we had to overlap so much. I think I ended up giving this 3 stars. Next up we have Summer Suns by Lee Mandello. This is an new adult Southern Gothic. We follow Andrew, whose adopted brother, Eddie. They had like a weird homoerotic, not quite relationship going on between the two of them. Eddie was adopted as they were teens, like he got taken in when they were teens, and then he dies, the brother, but he was on the hunt for these local folk tales to help explain what the two of them were experiencing, which was a connection with ghosts and dead people. And then we follow Andrew, like right at the start, Eddie dies, and we follow Andrew going to the college where Eddie was studying to meet with the people he was meeting with and try and figure out what happened. I really enjoyed this. It was super slow, like it was a slog to get through, but also I enjoyed every moment. You can definitely see this was inspired by the Raven Boys, but I don't think it's a direct rip the way some people seem to think. I think it just took a lot of the homoerotic elements that were in that. This is much darker to me. It has a lot of drug use. They're all self-medicating for their traumas, and it was just really good. The ending was probably the only thing I didn't absolutely love. I thought there was so much build up and the ending felt kind of rushed. But I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it 4 stars. Yes, but yeah, it took me like a whole week. Then I read A Marvelous Light by Freya Marsh, which I think, she's an Australian author, but I think my one big gripe with this book is it really should be a romance fantasy rather than a fantasy with some romance elements. This is a male romance with a strong fantasy plot. This is erotic at times. We follow Robin, who's just got this job. His parents just died, so he's now a baron. He gets this parliamentary liaison to a secret society of magicians, and we also follow Edwin, who is one of these magicians, introducing Robin to the world. There's a murder mystery component with this magic. The plot was really fun, but if you go into this thinking it's a magic plot, you'd be blindsided by the erotica. I enjoyed it, but you would be blindsided. I'd heard some people already mention it, so I kind of knew what I was expecting, but I don't think it's marketed that way. It's very sexy. Like, I'm very excited to read book 2. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It was a really fun time. The romance was great, but it's a romance with a strong plot, not a plot with a romance. Then I listened to The Mystery of the Painted Dragon by Catherine Woodfine, which is a middle grade mystery. This one follows forged stolen artwork. I enjoyed this. This is book 3 in a series. Wasn't my favorite in the series. I like the ones with murder more, but I really enjoyed this. There's one more to go, I think, which is The Midnight Peacock. And then there's a spin-off series, which is more spies rather than detectives like these ones. Yeah, this was good. We introduced some new characters, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, it was all around really decent. The audiobook was good. I give it 3 stars. I just wanted like more murder. This one I also gave 3 stars. This is The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is the sequel to the Inheritance games, which I loved, like 5 stars. I give this one 3 stars. My problem with this one is that like nothing happened. The first book was like chaos after chaos, boom, 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 boom. This one, nothing happened till maybe the last quarter. It very much felt like it should have just been a duology, and this was kind of bulked out to make it 3 books. I just read book 3. Basically, this series follows our main character Avery, who receives a letter saying she's part of the inheritance of this uber rich guy, and she doesn't know why. And she goes there to read the will, and part of the rules is she has to stay in this house for a year or something before she can leave, if she wants to keep the inheritance. And there's 4 grandsons. There's a bit of a romance going between her and like 2 of them, and it's very much like a puzzles mystery. I enjoyed the mystery elements. This one was just kind of lacking in them. There was a lot of just character interaction for a lot of this. Wasn't my vibe. Made this really slow. The first book I read in like a day. This took me way too long, and the chapters are really tiny. It just had no momentum. Very excited to read book 3 though. Like, I really want to read book 3. Then I read A Storm of Sisters by Michelle Harrison. This is the 4th book in the Pinch of Magic series. I really enjoyed this. It was fun. I really like all the characters. We follow Fliss, Charlie and Betty, same characters from the first trilogy, the original trilogy, on a new adventure. This one in a wilderness, and not a wilderness, in a wintry kind of setting. I do prefer the first 2 books in the series over the later 2, mainly because I really liked the setting of the first 2 and less so of the next 2, but this was really solid. I enjoyed it. A fun little mystery, adventure, magic stuff. It was fun. Give it 4 stars. Then I listened to Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, which I feel like I didn't give it its due diligence because I was tuning out so bad on this book, but then I started another book and read that fine. So I think it might have been that the writing style made me tune out. This is a sci-fi male-male romance, and I did enjoy the romantic elements. I felt very bad for one of the characters because it was obvious that he'd been abused from like the start, but nobody kind of picked up on it. And I was like, he's dealing with trauma. But I didn't care about the plot. It was like a political sci-fi. I didn't care about the world. I didn't understand the world. I didn't care about the plot. I don't know, I gave it 3 stars. I did love Disfigured by Amanda Leduc, which is a non-fiction that's exploring disability in fairy tales, and I loved this. I thought it was so well put together, interesting, intriguing. I learned a lot. I would recommend this. It's a really good, almost narrative non-fiction. It was amazing. I loved it. 5 stars. And then I read, I'm trying to rush through the end because I can't be sitting here any longer. I read Gallant by V. Schwab. I didn't love this either, disappointingly. It was alright. I gave it 4 stars. It just wasn't like everything I wanted it to be. It's kind of the same problem I had with Addie LaRue by V. Schwab, where I felt like the writing style didn't match what the atmosphere wanted to be. Like, it just didn't quite vibe. I wanted this dark, eerie, horror, gothic kind of vibe. Didn't get that from the writing style. Like, I didn't feel the atmosphere. It was like theoretically there, but not in reality, and I just couldn't like fully get invested in the plot or the story because I just didn't feel it, and it was the kind of story you needed to feel. Though I'm obviously like not alone, but also lots of people do feel that and like love this and Addie, so like don't take me as the deciding factor because plenty of people love this and obviously feel that atmosphere, but I didn't. So that was my thoughts on that. It's a haunted house mystery. We follow 16-year-old Olivia, who's mute, and her parents are dead or missing, and she's been in an orphanage for a long time, like an asylum for wayward children to a degree. And then she gets a letter from her uncle asking her to come back to the family house, but her uncle's dead and all that's there is her cousin and the like hired help. And mystery, but it's not that mysterious because it explains things pretty quickly. Gothic. I really like the formatting. It has a lot of like pictures and stuff. I really liked that element. Just didn't love the writing style, unfortunately. Yeah. And then I finished off the month with a short story. This is Knock Me Down by Skye Kalayan, which is a little short story that is part of her Love It Knockdown series. We followed Will and Nora, the characters who pop up in other books in the series. I've read the first book in the series, Get It Right. This is obviously like 1.5 or 0.5. Had a fun time with this. Super short. It's a little bit smutty if you want just a little bit of a on your morning. Enjoyed it. It was just like, it's a short story, so it couldn't deliver that much for me, so I gave it 3 stars. Those are all the books that I read in the month of March. I'm sick of listening to myself talk, so I'm gonna go have some lunch. But thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know down below if you've read any of these. I'd love to have a chat with you about them. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye.